Hello, my Copic friends. Michelle Houghton here. I've got all sorts of little things to show you. What we're going to be coloring today is this little cluster of succulents, and this is my second full set that I created and did this with Kraftin Kimmie. That's where you can find this set. So there's 5 little succulents and then several sentiments. They all have to do with succulents. Had fun looking for those. And then so what I did is I used all 5 of them in a small group so you can kind of see what I'm going to do to color those. And then so I picked the 3 that were going to sit closest to me, and then I created little masking pieces out of Post-it notes because that always works so amazing, and trimmed off the parts that I needed to, and then stamped the 2 back succulents. And I did that in both black and pink, and that's why you can kind of see some of these extra lines. And I tend to save all of these little Post-it notes with my stamps, because then when I layer these up again, I have them and I don't have to cut them out again. So obviously some of these I didn't cut out all the way. I didn't need to, and I might have to if I need them again on another occasion, but I can hold on to all of those. And then I used a couple other things that were from Kraftin Kimmie this month. If you're tuning in later, this was from the June 2021 release. So she has this fun stencil that came out this month, and this is with one of the ink color from this month, this kind of really pretty aqua color. So that is going to go in the background of the card to finish. Then the other piece, just so you know some of the pieces that are going in that are also from Kraftin Kimmie, is one of the things that came in the add-on kit for this month was an embossing powder. And when we get it split up, we always get it in these funny little baggies, but it works great. I actually thought it was going to be more of a sand color, and I thought, oh, how fun to do something with this to go with the succulents. Well, it actually is a gold. You can really see that shimmer with the light when I tip it. So I used just a Versamark pen that has a brush pen, and wrote hello and thanks and did those. And so I'm not totally sure how I'm going to use it yet, but I thought it'd be really pretty with the succulents still. So those are sitting off to the side. They may end up on the card when I attach those at the end that you can see. They might be there. So in the meantime, I have this whole range of succulents, and this could take a really long time. So I was trying to think of a way to do this and do little pieces of each so you guys can see it, and then either speed it up so you can see the rest, or just do the little pieces and that you guys can kind of finish them up from there. But I definitely like to show you because I use different combos on each one of them, and that way you can kind of see what I'm doing. So let's start with the big tall guy in the back. And I've got my whole pile of markers beside here, and I wrote down when I colored the first round kind of which ones I was using on what. So these I'm going to use a couple of G4s. I've got a G4, let's see, G4-3, G4-6, and then I use a G2-9. Those are going to be what I use on the tall guy in the back. All right. And I did do these no line, so it's kind of up to you if you go light to dark or dark to light. A lot of times with no line, I will go dark to light so that I don't lose my edges and lines in the center of things. So I'm going to use my G2-9. And I know this piece to the back is going to be darker. But what I realized on these guys is they kind of dip in the center And then they also have a dark as they come out to their edge. So it's kind of a funny shape. So down in here, it's actually going to be pretty dark most of that way. The other thing on almost basically all of these, I ended up using blue violets to really push and pull, or to push specifically, push things back. I pretty much had to get things kind of where I wanted them to sit. I also used, that was, sorry, my G4-6, and this is the G4-3. So I had to use the blue violets to push, but then I also used on a couple of them an opaque white, and that was specifically for some of the spines. The needles on cactus sometimes actually are lighter than the cacti itself, and so on this guy and then this little guy, I used the opaque white to show those little spines. So going back to my G29, and I'm gonna do this front one so you guys can see. So the top of the ridge is actually really dark. So I'm gonna come right along the ridge. And then what happened is kind of right down the center of each of these got darker as well, because it dips in and then pushes back out. It was such a unique one when I found it. And so just like anything else, when I'm kind of creating the stamps, I'm also working from images, finding ones that I like the shape of, and the colors even on them. I'm already looking for ones that have interesting appearances. So that was part of what drew me in on the group that I chose, ones that might be fun to color. So I'm going out in each direction from that kind of center band. And then coming out to the ridges over here to the right with the light. And I'll be honest, out of all of them, this one took me the longest to play around with. So feel free to adjust and make it work for you. You don't have to make it dip in at the center of each of these sections. That actually complicates it quite a bit. So if you'd rather do kind of a dark working out to a light, I totally understand that, because this one had me kind of really confused and going back and forth on it a little bit as well. So feel free to adjust and make this work for you. My main goal, and this is true, and my main goal on this one was to make sure I just kept these three kind of branches separate as much as anything. So I felt like as long as I accomplished that, that was really my most important thing. So I'm going to come in and bring that dark over a little bit more to this right side. There we go. And then I've got one more piece over here that's attached to this tall one in the back. I know that's part of this piece, so I'm gonna push that back a little bit. There we go. A lot of in and out though. All right, so pretty pleased on that one. So there is, and I'll do the same thing. I think it makes more sense now that I'm doing this to go ahead and finish them as I go. So as I do, I'll do one section and then I'll speed it up to do the rest on each. I hope that works for you as well. But let's do that, and that way I'm not having to go back and forth quite so much. All right, this next little guy, little tiny one, is really fun. It actually is going to use 2 reds and 2 YGs. I've got R85, R83, and then I've got YG25 and YG21. So these little guys, these have these big kind of flat kind of petals almost to them. And the fun part is that when you look at them, the petals have these almost red tips, but it literally melts into this beautiful kind of vivid green. So what I wanted to do was try to find a color combo that would do that, would allow me to create kind of that real distinct change in color. And this one, I knew the R8s actually melt really, really well. They blend and soften really beautifully. So I thought I might have a chance with these doing kind of what I was hoping for. So on some of these smaller ones, or the ones where we don't see quite as much, I'm not going to put as much of this red, just kind of touch right at the tips. And then I'm going to switch right over into my R83. And all I'm going to do is pull that barely further. So my goal here is to kind of melt or dissolve that edge of the R85 and pull it just a little bit further with the R83. But as much as anything, I really want to soften that edge of the R85. And this is what I like about the R8s. Reds can be hard. The R8s, I appreciate they're not like a real vivid red. They're more of a pink tone, but boy, do they work pretty darn good. So YG25 is actually going to come from the opposite direction. It's going to come from the bottom, and it's going to kind of come up the sides and have this kind of opening in the center of each one. That's going to help where they're coming out from behind another one. Again, remember what I talked about using some blue violets. Those will come into play here at the end on a lot of these to help kind of show where one starts and the other one stops. But hopefully getting that kind of scoop shape a little bit on each of these. And then YG21. Now this one, I'm going to come from the YG25, and what I just want to kind of really lightly brush into that R83. If I need to, I can kind of really just lightly touch at that edge, but again, this is where I like those R8s. It doesn't take much, and you can see how that edge just kind of spread just barely. It's exactly what I wanted. Because I don't want to necessarily have to go all the way up in there because I don't want the green and the red to mix. Those are complementary colors, and even though this is a yellow green, we're gonna make a really unusual color. But my goal is softening that edge, and this is definitely gonna do that. This one out of all of them is probably the easiest to color. It goes the quickest, which I really like. It's fast and easy, so obviously we got the whole thing done in a fairly reasonable amount of time. You could soften that a little bit more and push on it a little bit more if you want to. I hesitate to do a ton of back and forth because I feel like, again, I'm playing with fire a little bit with kind of two opposing color families, so just be a little cautious there. This little guy is going to go kind of a really desaturated greens. I've got a G8 to a G8 5, and then a G99. Let's see if I've got all these. G8 to G8 5, and then G99. So these three greens, 8-2, 8-5, and 9-9. All right, and this guy, the shape of this guy, it kind of bulbs out. It's almost like a pumpkin. It comes out, and at those seams, it tucks back in. So we're gonna tuck that right in with that. Oops, not the right one though. G99. So this is another marker that the cap does not do this color justice. It looks like it's lighter than the G85 the caps do. I hope you can kind of see that. This is the 9-9 and this is the 8-5, but we can go by the number better than the cap color on this one. It is definitely a darker color than the G85. So I'm not specifically trying to outline, but I'm trying to push in on those little seams. And I know as I get up, like up in here, because that top is probably going to catch light, I'm going to have to do that pretty cautiously so I don't get too dark. So, and we want to create the roundness of the entire shape. Remember, the entire thing is kind of one big sphere. And then we have these little pushes inward. So not only thinking about these interior lines, but also the entire shape itself of creating that round little ball of a cactus. Okay. We're going to work out from there with our G85. And if you have this color combo and you're doing this along with me today, you'll notice right away that the 9-9 is absolutely darker than the 8-5, but they play extremely nicely together. And whenever I say that about markers, it just means they blend really well. I don't mean to confuse anybody, but they're good blenders. They play nicely. All right, come across the top. Here we go. I'm trying to leave that little pocket of light where it kind of catches the light at the top of the cactus. And I might have to do a little bit more kind of pushing to get that light ring around the top. We'll see here. G82 is the last one. And I love coming in with this last color all the time and kind of going from the center and pushing out into those mid-tones and darker tones. Again, this is a fun color combo in that it does work fairly well and easily together. So we end up being able to complete a little shape much more quickly, which is always nice. And I do appreciate, so I've colored all of these at least once. I say that, I haven't colored this guy yet. My spiky dude. At least not since I got my stamp set back. So this actually is getting pretty close to what I want. You can play back and forth a little bit if you want to, but I picked up the wrong marker because of the lids. I didn't look. I was going to bring that dark up just a little bit more. This is that mid-tone. I picked up that G99 because I looked at the cap color, not the marker color. There we go. So what'll happen with this one is the spines on that style tend to be lighter. So I am going to go back in. When you stamp it in black, there's actually little dots there and you can't even see those anymore. Again, very purposeful when you do the no line. You have to figure out a way to put those back in. Now, if you wanted them darker, you could even use like a green multi-liner and just dot those. You could let it dry and use that G99, but I'm going to go back with a white because a lot of time the little spines or needles are going to be lighter. So I'm going to do that on this one, and I'm going to do that on the longer needles on the tall guy. All right. A lot of people have seen this kind of flowery little succulent back here. This one is a little more complicated, so I'm not going to color this all at slow speed. Just because if I did, we'd be here. Let me on to accentuate that for a really long time. But I'm going to use a G20, a G21, a V04, and then a BV20. And then you're going to finish with that first color, that G20 again. So we've got 4 colors, G20, G21, and then I've got V04 and BV20. So hold on, I'm going to pull out. I did this once already. I think I'd like to pull out I liked how it turned out. So I'm going to pull that guy out so I have a little bit of a reference. Okay. So G20 and G21 to start. And in particular on this one, I'm going to do it in sections. So 1, And then kind of mentally make note of how many petals you want to tackle at once. I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do several of the forward facing larger petals because those look different than when I'm only seeing the back. So here's 3, 4, and then I'm going to do the interior on this one. These two are actually facing away from me. And I'll do this one. I think I'm going to stop there. There's another group that are kind of scooped, and so we do see some of the interior, but this will give you a good idea. All right, G21. It's going to do a couple things. It's going to come from the base of the leaf, so the center where it connects down into the plant. It's going to come down and up. And then it's going to leave a little gap, and it's going to come from that outer edge in. So, and I'm going to do the same thing on every single one of these. There we go. So I'm just working my way around. Now see, this one is kind of facing inwards, so you have to kind of think about where is it connecting down into the plant, and then that's the outer edge right there. This is that top corner way out here. So on each one, just slow down enough so you know what you're looking at. All right. V04, this is really bright. It's going to go right along that outer edge, so it doesn't go to the edge of the leaf. It's where I put that G21, that outer kind of ring, and it's going to go right over the top of that kind of outer ring of G21. Again, especially on something like this, when it gets a little more complex like this, I'll do, even if it wasn't no line, I would probably do this in segments just so it doesn't overwhelm me, because this is a lot. It's a lot of steps, and you could even do one leaf at a time, but I feel like doing them in a little group works pretty well. And because there's so much marker switching, I feel like this tends to work fairly well. So BV20, now this is going to go right up into that V04, and it's going to pull down just a little bit. So watch what happens. It's going to melt the inside edge of the V04 and pull it down. I'm trying to leave that very outer edge, that just a hair more vivid V04. And then there's, believe it or not, there's really only one more step on these petals. So we're almost there on this little group. I got going there? Oh, I know what I did. Okay. Every once in a while I have to refer back to kind of the shape. I'm looking at this and I'm realizing I've kind of misplaced. I've got this leaf that kind of comes up and over there, so I didn't pull the violet up high enough. There we go. That makes more sense. And the BV. There we go. All right. While we have it out, I'm going to use the BV20 and I'm going to go into some spots that I know are kind of deeper in the flower, into the succulent. So I don't need to go all the way over the G21, but I'm going to find these deep corners that are coming up from behind other leaves. Kind of add that in some strategic spots. There we go. Adds a little clarity to some of that. My last step is back with my G20. So I'm going to go right into that area that stayed lighter and circle right into that. It's going to melt the edges of that BV20. Kind of bring it all together. Now I'm also going to go very lightly over that outer edge. That's twofold here. It's going to pop at that violet and it'll actually brighten it up a little bit, but it's also going to darken that YG21 up a little bit, to see how much darker it got to the center of the leaf when I went over it a second time. And I don't want to leave that outer edge super light. All right. So that's what I'm using on these guys. The two petals that are facing away from me, these two guys, they're not going to get either the violet or the blue violet. If they get the blue violet, it's only coming from the bottom up to kind of show that going back in. And then all the other ones that are you see have a scoop effect to them. So the part that we can see that's the internal, it probably is going to have a little bit of that violet depending on which direction it's facing. So let me grab the black and white line image. So like on this one that comes straight toward us, we might see a little bit of the violet along these two sides, but you wouldn't see it out here because that scoop is coming out and up towards us. So we don't get to see the violet at this end. On this one, because it's kind of to the side, you're going to see the violet along that far back edge, but you won't see it at this corner because again, it's folding up. So each one will look slightly different, but it'll have those same colors. The only two that really aren't getting any violets are these two guys right here that are truly facing away from us. And what I have seen, at least in photo references, is that those violets and blue violets are playing on the inside of the petals versus the exterior of them. Okay, so we will speed it up and finish up this guy. All right, so you do not need to make it as complicated as all that. You guys choose some options. If you feel like you lost some in and outs, you could grab a BV23 and push a couple of these little spots even further in. I know I've got a couple that's like, I'm not sure what's going on there. If you choose to do that, make sure to use it in a couple more. Like, don't just use it in the one spot. Go ahead and come through and see if you can find a few places where that plant pushes back in pretty far, so you can kind of accentuate that in multiple areas. And it usually doesn't take many to show those ins and outs. I'm gonna pull that up and into that petal with the BV20, and most likely I can stop there. I won't need to go any further. If I do, I can grab my G20 and soften that edge, but that might help just a touch with a couple of those. I think the only place I need to soften is up here, because it's easy to get lost in here. And the other piece I would tell you is, again, especially with no line coloring on an image like this, no one else is going to have the stamp as a reference, or even a black and white copy, and be like, oh, this should be this way and you didn't, you know, there just isn't going to happen. So if you lose a petal, if two like down here become one, I don't know that it's really going to be that big a deal. So keep that in mind. One more group, and then I'm going to fast forward, I think, through the pots. And then I need to decide how I'm going to finish the background. I definitely will color the pots, but I'm going to keep them really, really simple. I'm going to do a series of kind of terracotta and then kind of some royal blues and whites in there as well. This guy, though, I think I'm going to use a series of BGs, and it's actually a series of BG9s. And the way these are done, and you could do it in a couple different ways. You could do it with just ignoring those horizontal stripes and then coming back with opaque white, which actually I might do. My initial thought was to do this with the color and try to leave white like above each of those little pink horizontal lines. So I think it's kind of up to you. If I was coloring a black version of this, I would actually come in and come right up under that black line and then leave a little white kind of squiggle right above each of those. But I found this series of BGs. I've got a BG 99, 96, and 93, and that's what I'm going to use on this guy. So, and all of these are kind of curved. They're not a full cylinder, but they definitely curve kind of around. So I'm trying to think shape-wise where to go with this, and I'm thinking outer edge inward a little bit and leaving the center kind of almost like a cone shape. I'll do one and then we'll see. We'll see what we think. It'll also give me a chance to decide if I want to attempt leaving white behind, or if I want to not worry about that and then add the white in at the end. It also kind of tucks in and around at the bottom, so I think the bottom two stripes can get a little bit darker. So this was that BG 99. This is the BG96. I'm trying to leave a little light so kind of down the center of the leaf. We'll see if that happens. And then these little white stripes. BG93 is the last one. And I don't know that it needs to be a smooth transition from light to dark. And the edges of that white definitely don't need to be smooth. In fact, those tend to be kind of wiggly. So then the question is this doing what I want it to? I think it is. I feel like I obviously lost my white kind of at one spot in here, but I've seen him, when I looked at photo references, it was done a couple different ways. It actually looked like a little row of spines, and so it didn't go white like in a stripe. Fake ones, it actually is kind of a stripe, where it looked like the real ones was more like little spines. So I'm thinking if I do the whole thing this way, it might actually work just fine. So let's try like 2 more at least, and then we'll go from there. Let's see, I'm gonna go keep the white above the pink line. So I'm gonna go up underneath, I'm gonna just keep saying that all the way to the tip. So this one was kind of facing me. This one is turned kind of to the right side. Up underneath. Underneath. To the tip. These are colors that I don't use quite as often. So one of the things that's really nice is that the nibs are actually in pretty good shape. So to get into those really fine little tiny spots, it's actually, as soon as I say that, you know I'm going to make a big mess. But right now they're working pretty good. It'll be interesting to see as these bump up against each other, though, what happens here. We will find that out shortly, if that's going to work or not, or if I'm going to lose them entirely. So on a lot of these, this other side's going to be really, really narrow with the dark. I don't know that I'm even going to take it all the way up. This is where, again, I might have to come back with a blue violet to really emphasize where one is sitting behind another, or I'm going to lose those. And I'm wondering, I bet this is going to work better. I'm going to come right in with my lightest color and skip my midtone. Yep, I think this is going to be better. So the jump between the two is a fairly big one, but I kind of was hoping for this. Sometimes a lighter color has enough oomph to it, and the darker one is one that will kind of dissolve fairly easily, that you can just do the two, and it, even though we're not getting like a smooth blend, we're getting that edge to soften up, and it completely works. And it's exactly what's happening with this combo. So I'm going to jump from my BG99 all the way down to my BG93 and skip that mid-tone. And I'm going to be, I think, a lot happier. This one definitely needs the dark on the other opposite side, though. It's too wide to not have that over here. And I need to figure out who's sitting in front of who. And because I don't want to leave a white there, and kind of figure out. There we go. Now these colors are fairly dark, so I'm going to grab, I can try, see, this was kind of my practice card. So when I take a BG99, if I use, nope, so this is a BV23, and that is not going to be dark enough. So this is a BV25, and we're going to set this guy, if we can. I don't know if that's dark enough either. I don't think it's going to be dark enough. So, well, maybe it is. We're going to do one of these. Bring my tester over. Actually, that might be the ticket. Either one of those, really. So I tried a V99, just the violet 99, and the blue violet 29. So I think it's going to take one of those to really pull some of the kind of spears forward and push some of the other ones back. And I'm trying to decide. I think I still like the blue violet, just because I chose the blue greens on this guy. I've kind of lost this edge a little bit, but we'll see if we can pop it in there. And I think what's going to happen is I'm going to need to do that very first. if that makes sense. So that blue violet is going to have to go down and help define some of those edges before I even go in with the blue green, so that it pushes those little pieces back behind the others. I'm trying to be cautious because I don't want to overwhelm the image, but I also want to be able to see those pieces. And I think that's enough that I can see it. And that's part of the key. You don't have to have it running along each of those lines. And I'm trying to keep the white white. Okay, so I'm going to go in this order: BV29, BG99, and then BG93. But I am going to speed this up, or this is going to go forever and a day, coming up underneath and leaving that white. Okay, if your head is not hurting yet, I can tell you mine's about to explode. Having done this now, and you guys watched me really, truly color it no line the first time. I'd played around with coloring this, but I hadn't done it no line. So you guys are seeing this at the first attempt. I'm actually incredibly pleased with how it turned out, and I hope you guys can really see what's going on there. I can see all the pieces. I can see the striping to it. I'm actually extremely pleased with how it turned out. Two options to make that easier. First of all, this was kind of a tough color combination, and then it's all a little bit darker. And so then it is hard to find those edges. A couple of things you could do is to brighten that up a little bit so there's more contrast from light to dark. The other thing would be to ignore trying to leave those white stripes at all and actually add those back in, like I talked about doing that at the end with that opaque white, and that would make that easier as well. I'm thrilled with how it turned out, but I think that's more advanced to get to that. That was really a brain teaser for me to kind of keep that all sorted out. So you think on that before you tackle that one no line. It's doable. Anything is doable, but you know, how much of a headache do you want to give yourself? A lot of you may want to try for something else first. These other guys definitely, these two in particular, these were not bad at all as no line. This one just takes more time, as well as this one. This one's a little more of a challenge. I'm going to add a little bit of BV in on this guy that's behind it, and as much as anything so we don't lose this little needle. Let's see if I can pop that forward a bit. Just a little bit. And then down in here as well. And you could decide how far you want to push some of those areas. That's really, really subtle. And I did that with a BV23. If you wanted to pop this plant more forward, you'd have to go even darker, but I think that's actually a better balance between the two. So I am going to do, I think I'm going to do the pots, but I might just keep them really, really simple. And I think I'm going to just do that on my own versus trying to work through doing that on the video. I feel like we've kind of pushed it. And this was the important part anyway. I might still do a series of blues and terracottas on the pots. I can tell you what colors I'm going to use. I've got, for the blues, I have a B39, a B39, a B26, and a B16. That's going to be the blue. And then the terracotta is actually just an E93 and an E99. See if you can read those upside down. Sorry. E93, E99. And then that little grouping of, got most of them up, right? Sorry. B39, B26, B16. Do that. And then I have to decide how to get those on my background. But I think we're there. I'm there. I've kind of cooked my brain tonight. Thank you, as always, for joining me here at Copic in the Craft Room on YouTube. When you have a chance, if you have not, hop over to my blog and subscribe to that newsletter so you know where I'm teaching next and live, if I get teaching live again, as well as online stuff. So you know kind of my current doings. Thank you so much. Have a happy, colorful day.